And then I'd like to open it up to the questions, and I think that's going to be more interesting. And at that point, I'd like to bring up Gus and Luke, who made the film, so they can answer some questions too. But first, I will begin with some discussion. And I was just reading about how smart you were, Richard. I was reading, I think Prospect Magazine called you the world's greatest thinker. I wondered if you might want to comment.
I hope this doesn't work. Well, of course, that's nonsense. But it's very gratifying that, well, I was on that list, and Steven Pinker was on that list, and various other people were on that list. So I think that possibly is one in the eye for those who are saying that the atheist movement is dying, and it's sort of something rather sort of naughties about it, and now we've got into the teens, it's dying. Of course, that's nonsense too. So placing me number one on that list is clearly rubbish. But nevertheless, I'm pleased to be on the list, and that was very gratifying.
I think it really is. It says something's happening, and I think you know, one of the things, and we ended the movie, I think, with there was some discussion about the quote from Bill Pullman, and I really wanted that at the end, because I think there's often the question is, are we doing anything? Are we just bashing each other's brains out? And it's a question I ask myself all the time when I'm getting up early to go on a plane to do some of this stuff. Is it making an impact? And I think things like that suggest, to me at least, that it's worth it.
Yes, I agree with that. And in a way, that was a sort of negative ending to the film. And that's one way of doing it, and I think it probably was the right way of doing it. But one could make a case for having a more positive ending to the film.
Well, let's see. That leads actually to the next question. What I know we've talked about this, but what do you hope will happen? What that this film will do, and what will happen after this film? What do you hope for?
What I would like is for people who've seen the film to carry on the discussion, not just on the way out when they go to the pub afterwards and when they go to have dinner, but that the conversation will go on, and that this film will stimulate people to talk about the issues, to argue, to think critically, and to think perhaps as many people haven't thought before. I would really like to see that happen.
It's going to be. I'm fascinated to see what will happen. I mean, this has been amazingly gratifying to watch it with all of you and to listen to your response. I suspect that Gus pointed out that there are going to be one or two people who are offended. And
offended? What? Why?
Well, you know, it was interesting to me, actually. I did look at a review in the Globe and Mail, which talked about anyone who believes in the materialist view that somehow the natural world is actually explained by science might like the film, but but I kind of think that, I hope that, and I think Gus talked about it beautifully, and I can't wait to bring him up. I know Richard and I were just honored to work with Gus and Luke and the rest of the team, who, in my mind, just produced an amazing film. It's a piece of filmmaking, and I know we both want to thank them publicly for the remarkable job that they did, the two young people. That the discussion, I really hope that there's a discussion, that it provokes a discussion, and that was one of the reasons people have sometimes asked, well, you know, why the celebrities? In fact, I think it's okay to say Woody wrote me and said, you know, I think the fact that I'm in the movie reduces the net seriousness of it. But I'm hoping that people will, that will help with the discussion. There are obviously some people who know who we are, but my hope is that it'll reach the people who don't know who Richard and I are, and that this may be the very first time they've heard some of these questions, and that it will provoke discussion. And I think I think we tried to say in the film, and what we try in our lives, to argue that we're not proselytizing, that we're just trying to get people to talk about these things and question things. So I certainly hope that'll be the case, and I hope we'll see what the response is. But anyway. Speaking about what happens after the film. What's your next project, Richard?
Well, I'm slightly abashed to say that I'm writing my autobiography. I decided to split it into 2 volumes. That was to give me a nice feeling that I'd achieved something when I got halfway through. And so volume 1 is actually now finished, and I'm reading the proofs even now. And that'll be out in September. I haven't even started volume 2 yet, but volume 1 gets me up to halfway through my life, just when I finished writing my first book, The Selfish Gene, which did represent a kind of watershed event. It was a kind of new departure for me, and so the second half was rather different from the first half, which covers my childhood in Africa, my school days, and a rather sort of the typical British boarding public school that you read about in terrible fiction. Somehow managed to survive that, and went to Oxford, and then became an academic scientist, and then wrote the book that rather changed my life.
Any other spicy tidbits you want to let me?
Read the book.
Okay, I get my commission for that. Now, I'm actually right now happy to be back at doing. I'm trying to finish a few scientific papers next week and the next few weeks, which for me, I try intensely be involved in these things, but I need to be doing science as well. I just kind of feel that if I'm not talking about science, I'm kind of irresponsible, but if I'm not doing science, I'm talking about it at this point, I just feel empty, and so I'm happy to be going back and doing some of that, but I am finishing the final touches on the proposal for a new book, which I've been urged to do, which I can't talk about. But it will follow up on Universe from Nothing and hopefully make some more people upset. But I was going to say, I want to close, because I really want to go to the question here. I hope Charles isn't too mad, but I'm not going to take as long in the discussion as they asked us to, because I'd like to spend more time listening to your questions. But what do you think, what about us? What do you think we should do next? Should we continue going on the road or what?
Yes!
Woo! Do you think we should continue going on the road?
Well, maybe we should talk more about science.
Yeah. I was wondering about that. You know, some people have said that, and it's an interesting question. You know, you try and balance it. Maybe we'll get Gus up here and talk about this too, and Luke. I suspect there are people who are quite knowledgeable about what we're talking about who would have wanted more science. I also suspect there are people who've never thought about these issues, so think there'd be too much science in it. So it'll be interesting to see where the balance is. But I'd love to have a movie where we talk more about the science. Yeah, I'd like to try and do that. And you encourage us, and we will. And I think with that, I'm going to ask you all what you want to hear. But I'd like for this question period to call up Gus and Luke as well, so that you can ask questions about the movie as well as to Richard and I. And I want to thank all of you for the incredibly warm welcome you've given us here today. I really appreciate it. More chairs? I don't know what you're doing. Oh, you're going to moderate? I thought moderate. We don't like moderate.
You've got to repeat the questions for the people in the back.
BBC style.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to introduce
Why don't you guys sit down? We'll stay down. Yeah, you guys sit down. Come on. You deserve it. Okay, I'll sit down.
All right, so let's introduce. You've already met Luke. This is Gus, who is the producer of the film. So can we have a huge round of applause? All right, so do we have the first question? Oh, this was keen. Okay. Okay, let me just repeat the question. So the question was, what was the most embarrassing groupie type behaviour you saw when making the film?
What happened in Australia stays in Australia.
I just got a look from both of them, and
Well, I tell you what I heard about that. Which was that there were groupies, but that Lawrence and I never saw them.
some of our crew was a little less scrupulous than Richard and Lawrence, but they were happy to be hangers-on. Well, the best part...
Whoopsie-daisy.
The best part of groupie footage, it's not really exactly that, but in the film there's a really sped-up shot of a line that ends with Richard signing a book. I don't know if it's possible to tell from that shot, but I mean, that line was like a half a mile long.
Yeah, we signed for about an hour, over an hour.
Every single one of those people had a book, and that just is inspiring to me, that they're, you know, came out in those kind of droves.
It's inspiring to me, all except for my right hand, which is...
Yeah, it really is. And everyone apologizes for asking you to sign their book, which, I mean, you know, they've been waiting an hour, and how can, you know, it's an honor.
They were also signing iPads.
Yeah, we signed
A fair number of iPads.
And various body parts as well.
Yeah. No, we were talking about that. Okay.
I don't know if you know this, but we have people lining up from